When you think of Cheung Chau, what is the very first image that pops into your head? Be honest.
Oh, this is got to be the buns, right?
Right.
Those giant white
Yeah,
buns.
the ones stamped with the red characters, the ping-on buns, or I mean, maybe it's the bicycle rides because, there are no cars there.
Hmm. The fish balls.
Exactly, the fish balls. Just that general sleepy kind of vacation island vibe. It's the place you go to escape the pressure of the city.
It definitely is today. I mean, it's the ultimate weekend getaway spot. But if we actually look at the stack of documents we have for this deep dive,
And it's quite a stack.
it is. We are talking about some really heavy stuff here.
Yeah.
We've got colonial sanitation reports in the 1890s, land ordinances from 1919, anthropological studies on ritual,
Yeah.
and that sleepy island image.
Yeah.
It's actually covering up a much more intense and, frankly, a much darker reality.
I really have to admit, I was reading through these sources specifically regarding the 1894 plague and the origins of the Bun Festival, and it completely flipped my perspective.
It really changes how you see things.
It does, because we tend to look at the Bun Festival, the Taiping Qingqiu, as this quirky, fun folk tradition, something for the tourists and the Instagram feeds.
Right.
But the sources make it crystal clear this didn't start as a party. It wasn't for entertainment at all. It was a desperate survival response to one of the deadliest events in human history.
It really forces you to reevaluate the entire geography of the island.
Yeah.
Because we aren't just talking about a parade or, a climbing competition.
No?
We are talking about how a global pandemic, the bubonic plague of 1894, literally reshaped the map of Cheung Chau.
Yeah.
It rewrote the laws on who could live where, and it created the spiritual infrastructure that people are amazingly still using today.
So our mission for this deep dive is to decode the island. We're going to peel back the layers of history that are basically hiding in plain sight.
Exactly.
And I found some hidden gems in the notes, things you can actually go and see next time you visit that tell the secret history.
And I really want to connect the dots on the why. Because what we're seeing in these documents is a prime case study in how health crises reshape society.
Mm-hmm.
It happened in 1894, and it leaves scars that last for centuries.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the Great Plague of 1894. But here's the thing that surprised me the most. The story doesn't actually start on Cheung Chau, does it?
No, it doesn't. To understand why Cheung Chau looks the way it does, you have to start on Hong Kong Island, specifically in the Taiping Shan district.
Okay.
So in May 1894, the bubonic plague arrived from Canton. It was moving fast, hitching rides on steamships. And Taiping Shan essentially became ground zero.
And the sources paint a pretty grim picture of Taiping Shan at that time. It was incredibly dense, sanitation was basically non-existent, and it was home to a lot of poor laborers.
Yeah.
Specifically, the sources mention the Haifung or Hoklo immigrants. Just for our listeners who might not be experts in historical demographics, who were they specifically?
Right, so the Haifung, or Hoklo, are a dialect group originally from the eastern coast of Guangdong.
Got it.
And in Hong Kong at the time, many of them were coolies, manual laborers, or they were involved in a fishing trade. They were highly marginalized, living in these incredibly crowded tenements.
Wow.
And when the plague hit, the death rate in that specific community was catastrophic.
And the British colonial government just panicked. I mean, reading this, they didn't fully understand the disease yet.
No, they were still debating if it was caused by miasma.
Miasma, which is this really old idea of bad air or rotting vapors rather than actual bacteria.
Exactly.
But they knew they had to clean it up. So they sent in what they called the Whitewash Brigade.
Which, honestly, that name makes it sound almost harmless, like they were painting fences on a Sunday afternoon, whitewashing.
Yeah, it sounds like a community service project. But looking at the logs here, it's brutal. The reports describe something closer to a military raid.
It was a raid.
Soldiers were literally forcing their way into homes, burning furniture, burning clothes, and physically dragging sick people out to a floating isolation ship.
The Hygeia.
Right, the Hygeia.
You really have to imagine the terror of that. You're sick, your family is dying, and suddenly soldiers in uniforms you don't even recognize break in.
Break your door down.
Yeah, destroy your belongings and drag you to a ship in the middle of the harbor.
Mm.
And the Hygeia, well, the survival rate on that ship was abysmal.
It was a death sentence.
To the local population, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It wasn't a hospital to them.
It was a total clash of cultures because the locals didn't trust the Western doctors. They saw them as just cutting people up.
Right.
And the Western doctors viewed the locals simply as a sanitary risk that needed to be managed.
Exactly. And this is where we get to a really fascinating concept in the research. It's called spiritual technology.
Spiritual technology.
Yeah. When the medical technology, the Western medicine, failed or was just too terrifying to use because of that total lack of trust, the community turned to their own technology.
They turned to Pak Tai,
Yes, they turned to Pak Tai.
the emperor of the north.
Yes, Pak Tai is a martial god. He's usually associated with water, but because he is a north god and water extinguishes fire.
Right. And in traditional Chinese medicine, inflammation and fever from the plague are associated with fire.
You got it. He is the go-to god for suppressing plagues. So the community in Taiping Shan took the statue of Pak Tai and paraded it through the streets to cleanse the area of the sickness.
But here is where the plot really thickens. The government shut it down.
They stepped right in.
They said, no, this is a fire hazard. This is a crowd control issue. You cannot do this here.
So the community faced a really stark choice: stop the ritual and potentially die from the plague, or move.
Wow.
And that's exactly what they did. They took the ritual, and crucially, they took that specific statue of Pak Tai and they migrated to Cheung Chau.
Because there was already a community of their kin, the Haifung people, living on Cheung Chau.
Specifically on North Pak Shi Street.
Right. They basically treated the island as a spiritual refugee camp.
Precisely. It was a strategic retreat. They moved their spiritual technology to a place where they could practice it without the colonial government breathing down their necks immediately.
Because they needed to save themselves.
And they fully believed this ritual was the only way to do it.
And this leads perfectly to my first hidden gem for you, the listener. If you go to the Bun Festival today and you watch the parade, there are lots of statues.
Oh, dozens of them.
But pay attention to the one leading the whole procession.
What stands out about it?
Well, logic would dictate it should be the local Cheung Chau Pak Tai, right? The one from the big temple everyone visits on the island.
You would think so.
But it's not. The sources say the statue leading the parade is the Taiping Shan Pak Tai. It is literally the refugee god from 1894.
See, that is a fascinating detail, because it means the festival isn't just about local Cheung Chau history. It's a living memorial to that migration from the city.
Yeah.
Every single year, for over a century, they have been reenacting that escape from the plague zone, led by the exact same statue.
It's incredible. You're looking at a 100-year-old artifact of survival leading the way. But the plague didn't just bring gods to the island. It brought the government too.
Unfortunately.
And this is where the story gets really interesting and honestly kind of infuriating if you look at it through a modern lens.
This is the part that really highlights the political fallout of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Because the plague didn't just end in 1894.
Right. It became endemic.
Exactly. It kept popping up in Hong Kong for decades, usually in the spring. And the colonial government developed this very entrenched mindset that Chinese living areas equaled filth and European areas equaled health.
So they decided to legislate it. I was reading the source material about the Cheung Chau Residence Ordinance, number 14 of 1919. Now, Ordinance 14 sounds like some boring, dry zoning law.
It does.
But when you look at the map provided in the documents, it's actually shocking.
It was a literal tool of segregation. The ordinance carved the island in two. Listeners, just picture Cheung Chau's shape for a second. It's like a dumbbell, right? A big chunk of land on the north, a big chunk on the south. And they're connected by this narrow strip of sand where the ferry pier is today.
Right. The narrow part is where all the shops and the McDonald's are now.
Exactly. This law reserved the southern part, the nice, hilly, breezy area, exclusively for people who had written permission from the governor and council.
And let me guess, that written permission wasn't exactly being handed out to the local Haifung fishermen?
Not at all. The sources show that by 1938, in that restricted southern zone, not a single Chinese person owned a home.
Not one.
Not one. It was effectively a sanitary buffer for missionaries and Europeans. They wanted a place where they could live without the fear of infection from the local population.
It's crazy because the law didn't explicitly say no Chinese allowed in big, bold letters.
No, they used legal loopholes.
But the effect was 100% racial segregation, just disguised as public health policy.
That's the pattern we see in a lot of colonial history from this period. Hygiene becomes a very convenient justification for control. They viewed the Chinese cultural practices, the density of the housing, the way they kept livestock, as a direct threat to public safety. So the solution was just physical separation.
And this brings me to hidden gem number 2. Because this isn't just on paper in some dusty archive. You can still see it on the island today.
The physical markers.
Yes. The government put up physical markers. They are called boundary stones.
These are those granite stones, about waist high, marked with numbers, right?
Exactly. There were 15 of them originally, and the sources point out specifically stone number 14.
Okay.
It's located near the Peak and St. John Hospital. And I bet thousands of people hike past that stone every single weekend on their way to the lookout point.
And they probably think it's just a trail marker or a distance post.
Exactly. But it's not. It's a literal monument to sanitary apartheid. It marks the exact line where the locals weren't allowed to live.
It's a very powerful reminder of how an invisible virus can create very visible, very real walls in a community. You have the sick north and the healthy south, divided by a piece of granite.
So we have the refugee god on the north side and the segregation stones on the south side. But who was actually running the north side? Because the British seemed completely focused on their little VIP zone in the south.
That brings us to the real power players of the island, the Wong Wai Tsak Tong.
Wong Wai Tsak Tong. That sounds like a clan from a kung fu movie. Who exactly were they?
In a way, they were the local lords. This clan effectively owned 90% of the land on Cheung Chau.
90%.
Yes, the British had the sovereignty, sure, but this clan had the actual deeds to the land. The sources call it a double-track governance system.
Okay, so the British made the laws, but the clan collected the rent.
Exactly. And the sources mentioned they were the ones funding the Bun Festival originally.
Which is interesting. Why would a wealthy landlord clan care about funding a local folk festival?
It was a very effective way to maintain authority. Think about it. You have a scared population terrified of the plague. If you, the landlord, sponsor the rituals that theoretically save the people from the plague, the people stay loyal to you.
It's classic patronage.
Exactly. They were buying social stability.
But the people needed more than just rituals. I mean, they were dying. And remember, they were terrified of the Western isolation ships like the Hygeia.
Right.
So the community actually built their own solution. And this is the story of the Fong Bin Hospital.
And the name is really interesting. It translates to convenience hospital.
Which sounds a bit odd to modern ears, doesn't it? Convenience usually implies a snack shop or a quick stop. Like, I'm going to the convenience store.
Right. But in this specific context, convenience meant something very specific and very heavy.
Yeah.
It meant it was a place where it was convenient to handle the affairs of the sick and the dead according to tradition.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a hospital in the modern curative sense. It was a hospice and a coffin home.
And we really need to explain why that was necessary. The sources mentioned the boat people, the floating population. They had a very strong superstition that you couldn't die on the boat, right?
Yes. If someone died on the boat, it was believed to bring terrible luck to the vessel. And you have to remember, the boat was their livelihood and their home.
Right.
So if you were dying of the plague, or really anything else, you needed a place to go on land to die.
So their choices were pretty grim. Get dragged by soldiers to a British ship where you die alone, or go to the convenience hospital run by your own people.
Exactly. The Fong Bin Hospital offered traditional Chinese medicine, which they trusted. But more importantly than that, it offered a dignified death.
Dignity.
Yes, it was a place where your body could be stored properly in a coffin until it could be safely buried. It was entirely about dignity.
And this connects directly back to the Bun Festival itself. The sources mention one of the main rituals of the festival is feeding the water ghosts.
The water ghosts. These are the spirits of people who died violently by drowning or without a proper burial.
And during the plague years, the number of these restless spirits would have just skyrocketed.
Oh, absolutely. Many of them would have been the exact victims who passed through places like the Fong Bin Hospital.
So the hospital treated the bodies, and the festival treated the souls.
Precisely. They were two halves of the exact same system. You really can't understand the festival without understanding the massive death toll that necessitated it.
And for you listening, here is hidden gem number 3. The Fong Bin Hospital building is actually still there.
Really?
Yeah, it's near the end of Pakshi Street. Now, it's not a hospital anymore, obviously, but the structure itself remains. It's this physical reminder of how the community fought for their own way of handling death during a severe crisis.
It's amazing how these buildings are just sitting there in plain sight. You can walk right past the history of resistance without even knowing it.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit. We've covered the plague, the segregation, the clan power. Now we have to talk about the buns.
The Bun Mountains.
Yes, the tower, the thing everyone knows Cheung Chau for. But the festival we see today, the one on all the postcards, is very different from the one in 1894. Something happened in 1978 that changed everything.
That was the major turning point. By 1978, the festival had become huge. It was attracting thousands of tourists. But the infrastructure was still traditional.
Right.
They were using these giant towers made entirely of bamboo, covered in real, edible buns. And on May 9th, 1978, one of those towers collapsed.
I've seen photos of the old towers that they were massive, and hundreds of people would just scramble up them at the exact same time to grab the lucky buns. It looked totally chaotic.
It was chaotic.
Yeah.
And when it collapsed, dozens of people were injured. It was a major disaster, and the government did what governments do. They banned the climbing completely.
For 26 years.
26 years.
That's a whole generation of people that grew up without the bun scramble.
But then, in 2005, it came back.
It did.
But this is where we have to put on our critical thinking caps, because it came back different. The source is actually called the invention of tradition.
Oh, totally. It feels completely engineered now.
It is engineered. The traditional bamboo was replaced by a modern steel A-frame structure. It's engineered to strict safety standards. And the real buns on the tower,
Yeah.
they were replaced by plastic replicas. Because the real ones would get messy and slippery and dangerous.
Plastic buns. And the people climbing aren't just local villagers fighting for luck anymore.
No, they are trained athletes.
Exactly. It's a sport now. There are qualifiers. You literally have to wear a safety harness to climb.
And this is the massive shift the sources point out.
Mm-hmm.
The festival started as a desperate religious rite to ward off a plague. It was meant to appease the dead and save the community.
And now?
Now it's a spectator sport regulated by the government to entertain the living.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? The same government that once sent the Whitewash Brigade to burn the homes is now the one safety checking the steel tower and promoting it as intangible cultural heritage.
It is a complete sanitization of the event. We've taken the danger out of it. We've taken the ghosts out of the buns.
Yeah.
Literally, by making them plastic.
Plastic buns. That really says it all. It's like the festival has been vacuum sealed.
It has. But I think it's important we don't just be purely cynical about it.
How so? Because it does feel a bit like a theme park version of itself now.
Well, societies change. We don't have the bubonic plague killing thousands in Hong Kong anymore, thankfully.
Fair point.
The raw fear that drove the original festival is gone. So the festival really had to evolve or die. It transformed from a survival mechanism into a celebration of local identity.
That's a really fair point. It's better that it exists in this form than not at all, and it definitely keeps the community on the map.
And if you look closely, the core is actually still there. The rituals, the Taoist priests, the burning of the paper ghost king, that all still happens.
So the foundation remains.
Right. The flashy steel tower is for the cameras and the tourists, but the actual spiritual work is still happening in the background.
So when we look at Cheung Chau now, we are really looking at a layer cake of history.
A very complex layer cake.
We have the bottom layer, the plague. That's represented by the refugee Pak Tai statue leading the parade, the survivor of 1894.
Then the middle layer, segregation. The boundary stones that mark the sanitary apartheid and the division of the island.
And the top layer, modern tourism, the steel tower, the plastic buns, and the souvenir shops.
And don't forget the convenience hospital, bridging the gap between life and death, just sitting quietly in the background through it all.
It really makes you rethink the whole island. If you had to sum it up, what is Cheung Chau really?
I would say Cheung Chau is a living museum of trauma and resilience. It's a place that shows us exactly how Hong Kong dealt with its darkest moments. The festival isn't just a quirky party, it's a 100-year-old coping mechanism.
Wow.
It's how a community processed death, fear, and discrimination, and somehow turned it into something they could be proud of.
That is profound. It's not just a festival, it's a scar that healed over. So here is my final question for you, the listener. Next time you are on Cheung Chau and you buy one of those famous peace buns, the ping on buns with the red stamp on it, I want you to take a second look at it.
What should they be asking themselves?
Ask yourself, are you looking at a cute snack? Or are you looking at an edible vaccine? Because that's what it originally was. It was an edible vaccine against the fear of death.
That is a very powerful image to leave on.
It's been a fascinating deep dive. I'm definitely going to hunt for Stoner 14 next time hiking up there.
Just remember to look down. History is often right under your feet.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.